to the latest episode of our podcast, Play, Learn, Lead ECE Voices of NL. I'm Taylor.
And I'm Sonia. And this month we're going to talk about positive behavior guidance with our guest, Lori.
Hi, everyone. All right. My name is Lori Chalk. Thanks to Taylor and Sonia for having me. Really excited to be here this evening. I'm a level 4 early child educator. Been in the field of early child education now for 33 years. So I do have a master's of education. Let's see, I finished that in 2015. I specialize in early childhood and teaching and learning. So I've been thinking about doing my PhD, hopefully, see how that goes. I've been a frontline ECE. I've been a center administrator, a provincial education coordinator. So there I organized PL and conferences in Ontario. I managed an ECE lending library there as well. I've taught both at Sheridan College and College of the North Atlantic in both their ECE diploma programs. For 10 years, I was a childcare consultant, so responsible for licensing monitoring of regulated childcare services. And currently, I'm the Associate Dean of EC at College of the North Atlantic and also provide private educational and consulting services for those in the early learning and childcare sector. So happy to be here and talking about positive guidance in early child education in our early learning environments. Certainly, it's an important topic. It's one that surrounds us daily as we work with all ages of children, and we know it's foundational for creating those nurturing, those respectful, those developmentally appropriate early learning environments. And when we talk about positive guidance, it goes beyond that managing behavior. It really talks about how we build relationships, how we foster that
Yeah.
emotional intelligence, and how we support those lifelong skills. So yeah, happy to be here and I guess further discussions, any questions anyone might have.
You have a lot of experience,
Yes.
like a very vast.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Um so one thing that I'm really curious about when we talk about positive behavior guidance, a lot of it is about like rephrasing
Yeah.
what we say and how we say
Right.
it. And you have those phrases, walking feet, listening ears, helping hands. And how how could we veer away from that?
Yeah. So
And
okay.
what is it about those phrases that like aren't super effective?
Right, right. So, when we hear educators or, trainees that may be just learning about guidance and they say something like, you know, um, use your indoor voice. Well, it's very subjective,
Mhm.
right? Because what my indoor voice
Mhm.
might sound like compared to someone's other indoor voice may be very different. So it doesn't really give
Right.
you what it is that as the adult that you're looking for when you're asking for a child to correct that behavior that they're doing. So,
Right.
and when we're
Mhm.
rephrasing languages, we want to make sure that yes, it's very positive. It's
Mhm.
I often compare it to the signage that you see in a swimming pool. Everything is no running, no hitting, no this,
Yeah.
no that, and so for children, that doesn't tell them what you want them to do. So you want to be
Mhm.
very positive, but very clear at the same time. So if for example, an educator doesn't want the children to run inside the classroom, please walk when inside.
Right.
Then it's
Mhm.
very clear to the child that instead of running, you're going to walk. And also if you say don't run, well then to a child that mean it's okay to skip or it's okay to jump, for example. But when you
Mhm.
just say
True.
please walk
Yeah.
when we're inside, then that also is very clear in terms of what you want to
Mhm.
do. It's same as stop yelling. You often hear you know an educator or a parent say you need to stop yelling, but at the same time you're actually yelling. So you're not really
Yeah.
modeling that positive behavior
Right.
that you're looking for. So let's use a quiet voice while we're inside. Let's practice what a quiet voice might look like. So what would a loud voice look
Mhm.
like? Let's everyone do a loud voice. Now let's everybody try a quiet voice. And so that, gives the children a practice and makes it clear again what you're looking for when you say a quiet voice, for example.
And in that too, like you're engaging them
Yeah.
in the learning experience because play is learning and that's kind of like a game a little bit.
Mhm.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
for sure.
Yeah. the no hitting, because we know children are learning about their bodies, they're learning about their spatial awareness, they're learning self regulation. So when you say something like no hitting, they're still not sure what's appropriate to do, if they're still
Mhm.
learning, because again, they're sensory individuals when they're young. So if you say, instead of saying no hitting, you might say, you know, hands are for helping, just something very quick, or hands are for
Right.
eating, not for hurting, something like that. So it gives them, and then practice it. I used to do that with the children, or ask the older children to help out. What's something else we could do instead of running?
Yeah.
Oh,
Mhm.
use our walking feet. Show us what that's like. And then another child kind of role models that to them. Let's everybody practice that, right? And so, yeah,
Mhm.
when the children are involved, it's the same as adults, right? That buy-in is kind of there then, and then they understand it better. And usually, things settle down. And then sometimes it's just gentle reminders after that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, and a lot of those are like your boundaries and your limits in your
Hmm.
classroom, your guidelines. And so when we set
Hmm.
boundaries, I th- we really need to make sure that we're not taking the children's
Hmm.
autonomy away from them.
Absolutely.
So, what are some ways that we can ensure that we do it like
Yeah.
that?
And you're exactly right. Children thrive when they feel very empowered and when they
Hmm.
feel very respected. So when you're giving boundaries
Yeah.
that have alternatives and choices built in, that's exactly what you're doing. You're supporting
Yeah.
the autonomy of the child. So an example might be, when you do your 5-minute warning that it's time to clean up, and then it's time to clean up. You might say to a child, "It's time to clean up. Would you like to put away your blocks, or would you like to put away the books first?" So it gives them choice. We're
Hmm.
still cleaning up, but they have that autonomy of what they want to put away first. What
Mhm.
do they want to start
Yeah.
with? Do you want to start with the red Legos, or do you want to start with the blue Legos? Or which ones could I help you clean up? That kind of thing, because it is, there's a lot of materials. Not as children are learning to put something away when they're finished before they take something out. Then you have toddlers who are, into dumping and filling. So a lot of things sort of happen. So when it is important that some things get put away, for example, maybe there's cuts coming out, so we really do need to put away some materials that may not be able to be left out for another period of time, or maybe we can move it to another area or keep safe on a tray, for example. Yeah, having those choices. Going outside is another one. We have a lot of children, of course, who aren't ready for putting on layers of clothing, for example, or, they don't feel like
Yeah.
they need their jacket on, but you may feel that they might want that jacket on. So, you may want to give them the choice. Do you want to put your hat on first or your jacket on first? Or do you want to take your jacket outside and then, you can put your jacket on outside or inside, things like that. So, yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
just again, when children are part of the opportunity and the choices, they feel that sense of independence, which they really want, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of power in, I think, making sure we give them, like, say, two
Hmm.
choices. Because if I were to say to you, Lori, what do you want to put on first?
That's right.
Well, first of all, you could answer nothing,
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
right?
Yes. Yeah, and 2 is the magical word for younger children, right?
Hmm.
3, you're
Yeah.
starting to push it. So 2 is plenty
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
younger children. Yeah, and you're providing the choices, right? And then
Yeah.
they still get the
Mhm.
opportunity to pick from those choices.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, if we have a child who absolutely does not want to put their clothes on for outside, and they get so overwhelmed with everything that's happening around them, and they're not wanting to do it, that they can't hear
Mhm.
us.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
How, and you're still trying to support the rest of the children in the room and your partner. How do you balance all of
Yeah,
that?
and it is a tough call, because there is a reason potentially why the child may not want to
Mhm.
put that
Mhm.
coat on, at that particular time. So if this is sort of the first time that it's happened, I wouldn't really make a big deal other than say, that's okay, but we'll take it outside with you. Because I am
Mhm.
noticing it's a little bit cold, and it's there for you when you need it. And I would just check in with the child, instead of that
Mhm.
power struggle that may happen, for
Yeah.
example. And again, when children are upset, um, you really got to deal with the emotional side of things before they're even ready to have
Yep.
alternatives or choices provided to them, right? If they're not in that sort of
Yeah.
frame of mind. But if it's becoming sort of a pattern that you're noticing, like every time it's time to go outside, there's an issue with putting on clothing, then you'd almost want to ask yourself, what is it? Is it that maybe the jacket is too warm for that particular child? The material may not be something that they like doing. It's bulky, so they find that they can't move around well, or it's not keeping them warm enough, for example. And there just may be reasons for why that
Yeah.
jacket may not be. So maybe a choice of another jacket, so they can pick a different jacket that they might want to use. A lot of children like to dress in layers, for example. I know my son was a child who was always warm. I'm the same way. Hence, it's end of October, and I'm here in a sleeveless shirt. But my son was a very warm individual, and when he was going outside and he was being dressed in a snowsuit and, snow jacket and so forth, he was sweating. And as a result of sweating, you know what happens? You get cold, right?
You do.
So
Yeah.
one of the things that we stopped doing that because he didn't need that same amount of layering of clothing as maybe another child did. So it was out there if he wanted to put it on, but there was layering. So he might have, chose his hoodie and bring his coat outside, for example. He was always that kid
Right.
with the
Mhm.
sweaty hands, the sweaty head. So you kind of had to like to learn to play with that, because especially if they're children who are doing a lot of running and climbing, it's not. Sometimes it's just those clothings are a bit in the way, right? So talking with the parents,
Mhm.
Yeah.
seeing what you could do to do alternatives. But I think the biggest thing is like, you know, we'll get outside and we can learn about it as a learning moment, as in checking in with the child to see how they're feeling. Let's check our hands. If they're feeling warm, then they're probably okay, right?
Right.
Yeah.
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 I know you mentioned um feelings as well, and I think it's so important to validate those
Hmm.
feelings. You know, how often do we sometimes get caught up and just brush it aside and say, "Oh, you're okay,"
Yes, that's right.
or "It'll be okay."
Yeah,
But we need to recognize that there is something that they don't feel okay about,
that's right.
right? And we need to find that. How do we find that
Yeah,
if a child is just so
yeah.
upset? Like we need to connect with
Hmm.
them.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. So, and the connection is the big thing. When
Hmm.
children are upset, for example, like if you see a child who's upset because they really want the turn with that red fire truck and they want it now, it's difficult when you're young to um, be patient, to turn
Hmm.
taking is a skill that they learn, that they grow and they get stronger as they practice that skill. But in the meantime, when they want it and they want it now, that's difficult. So they may have those big feelings, right? Some children will have those real crocodile tears and they're just heartbroken because they can't have it right now. Other children may become very angry, frustrated, upset. They throw something as a result of it, for example, or you'll see them sort of stamp their feet, or put themselves on the floor, those kinds of things. So it is, children need to feel heard. They need to see that you see what they're feeling, and they know that when you name it, right? So I can see you're really upset. I can see you're really sad. You really wanted to have that turn, and that's hard. Let's talk to Sally to see when it might be your turn. Or, what would you like to do while you're waiting? Would you like to play a board game with me, for example? But naming the feelings, so if it is sad, if they're mad, if they're frustrated, depending on the language, the level of, emotional language that they have, you can use simple emotions or such as sad, or as the children are older, they may understand words like frustrated, for example. And you
Mhm.
can work with those feelings. And when we're problem solving with children, for example, like through conflict resolution, such as two children fighting over, a red fire truck, and one is really upset because it got taken from them, or they were the ones that wanted that red truck, we don't really start offering the opportunity for them to discuss what the problem is, to talk about solutions, that they may have some suggestions for. And we're talking preschool children, of course, with some language at this
Hmm.
point. until the emotional piece is dealt with, right? So that you
Yeah.
acknowledge
Mhm.
the feelings, and then, as people are settling down, then we'll be ready to talk. And sometimes that may happen, momentarily. Sometimes that may need an opportunity for children to just come away for a little bit, maybe sit with you, have an opportunity to relax, to calm, to take deep breaths, for example, and then they can go back into the learning environment to problem solve and to make decisions and help initiate some meaningful choices and those kinds of things for what might happen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think as an ECEs we're all about the emotions,
We
we
really are.
really are. Naming
Yeah.
emotions is the number one thing that we do. And you talked about that connection with the children too, and it's so important that we do have a connection with children, because before we do any sort of guidance, because how do you guide someone that you don't even really know, or that they don't have that
Mhm.
trust and security with
Yep.
you, right? So it does take time um, for that to happen, especially if it's new children coming into the program. So building that emotional regulations, building that connection, and then they're able to respond to more guided strategies that you would put in place.
If you have a child in your room who is constantly pushing other
Mhm.
children, what is the best way to help that
Yeah.
child?
So I've gotten
I'm sure there's many
there's
steps
many steps
involved.
involved, and it's really not something that you can give an answer in at that moment. So as an example, I've come in lots of times as a consultant, and there is a child doing exactly what you said. Sorry, did you say pushing? Yes.
Yeah.
He's always pushing, like constantly pushing. Others like, I don't know what to do. What can I do? And that's a big question to ask that requires some
Yeah.
really great observations, right? That you need
Yeah.
to collect. So what we know about behavior is that there is a why behind every behavior, right? So behavior tells a
Mhm.
story, right? It's a form of communication. So if we
Okay.
see a child behaving, there's lots going on. So the one key element is there's factors about the child themselves that we would look at. So and we do that by looking at everything from their physical to their emotional to their social, their personality, their temperament, what's going on in their development, all that good stuff that maybe may have sort of some sort of factors that's hitting, that's the pushing, sorry. And the environment itself is another factor that really impacts behavior. So when we look at the environment, we look at like our social environment. So that's like, what are the adults? What are other children? So is there something going on in the environment where pushing is being role modeled, and it's a norm and it's a good consequence given when you push, for example, or that physical environment that's happening. So, and then also our schedules and our routines. So, is there a particular time in the routine where that pushing might be happening? Maybe it's during a transition, and the transition is really long. So, it's requiring the children all to line up and wait for everybody to be ready before we go out. And this is where you're seeing that behavior happening, for example. But also, for all behavior that we know, is that every behavior has a function, right? And that's purpose
Yeah.
for the child. So it's either meeting a need of some sort for the child, or is
Mhm.
allowing the child to avoid or escape from something that they just don't want to,
Right.
want to happen to them, or something that they don't want to do. So there's we kind of collect a bit of evidence, and that's where our, as early childhood educators, as professionals, we have those observation skills to be able to take a lot of observations and anecdotal notes, speak to the families around those kind of areas, that child, that environment, and that function. But what's really exciting about behavior is that, or what we call our ABCs, right, is that there's an
Yeah. Mhm.
antecedent. So meaning something happens before the behavior, and then there's the behavior, and then there's the consequence, which is what happens after the behavior. And what's really great about it is that when the behavior happens, if it's a challenging behavior, meaning it's repeating over time, it's impacting the child, others, and the program. It's not just a one-off. Okay, he hit today, you were able to take care of that and you moved on. But this is becoming challenging. You can
Mhm.
watch it.
Mhm.
So it's observable, which is really good news, and it's repetitive, right? So if you sit back and you're able to observe, you will see the antecedent, what happened before
Yeah.
the behavior of the pushing, and you will see the consequence. So when the child pushed, so for example, as an example, the ECE says it's now time to tidy up, for us to wash our hands. So the antecedent is the ECE saying it's now time to tidy up so we can wash our hands. The behavior is the child hits. The consequence is what happens when that child hits. So was it a consequence that worked well for the child? In other words, met a need, or they got to avoid to escape from something. So a consequence like that might be, the ECE says, since you've been hitting, you're not going outside when we finished, our snack, as an example. So the child may be like, "Oh, this is great. I didn't want to go outside." So now I know if I hit again, the consequence that I get is I don't have to go outside. It's a good consequence. But what we know
Mhm.
is in regulated childcare, it's really not a consequence that's even going to work, right? We've got ratios to do.
Mhm.
First of all, it's not positive guidance. We're
Yeah.
punishing, we're taking away a part of routine, which is not what we want to do. Meanwhile, if the consequence is not self-serving, um, then usually it's okay. So it's often a negative. Some children like negative attention to something they do, or they like positive attention towards something that they do as well. So it depends, right? It depends, what's going to happen with it. So it takes a bit of, investigation. It takes observation, some documentation, but then when you get that antecedent and that behavior and that consequence down pat, and you're able to look for it, then you're really able to put some strategies in place, um, to ensure that that consequence is not, that
Mhm.
function of that behavior, that pushing is not there for the child to want to repeat that behavior
Right.
the next time, right? Yeah.
I think also when we have challenging behaviors, it can be so tempting to slip into a negative
Mm-hmm.
mindset.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's actually really, really important that we give the children the benefit of a
Mm-hmm.
doubt, that we try to figure out what that purpose, that
Yeah.
message, and that reason is so that we can support them.
Absolutely.
If we assume the worst, then they're going to get negative attention,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just going to
Right.
snowball.
And it's really sad that children will seek negative attention because it's still attention. And our
Yes.
job is
Often more
right,
powerful attention.
absolutely.
Yes.
And our job is really that they want to seek more of that positive attention, right? And that
Yes.
that can be that's a mindset. That's a mindset of the adult in the environment,
Mhm.
at the time, and what they have to do. So it's actually quite interesting because, I guess it's kind of the, long term or short term pain for long term gain, right? Because we can
Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
we can fix it right there in the moment. You got two children and they're fighting over that red fire truck, then the simple solution is go find a second fire truck, or say, okay, you're going to have 5 minutes and you're going to have 5 minutes and we're good to go. But we're only good to go until the next time comes around and they're upset about the fire truck again. And now we haven't taught
Yeah.
them some
Learning.
skills like conflict resolution, for example, of how they can figure out how they might want to turn take, for example. Or we do set the environment. So in a toddler room, for example, it's always great to have two of everything, right? Because we do
Mhm.
know they're at that developmental stages of really, only just starting, to have that social play. And there's a lot of, social rules that comes with being able to play with
Yeah.
others, like sharing and turn taking, which again are skills that you learn over time. And I'm not sure if there's adults yet that know how to play in the sandbox properly. Uh, so yeah, so it's, like you said, going back to giving children the benefit of the doubt. Absolutely,
Mhm.
we do need to assume that, whatever the intent of the behavior is for that child at that time, it's what they needed to do, or had the skill to do at that time. And, you're always teaching, right? Adults do very well, for example, when a child comes and say, "Show me how to tie my laces." I mean, we all got our different techniques. Some people, you take the two bunny ears and and there's little songs that go with it. And people, you teach it. You don't even think different otherwise. You teach it. A child wants to learn how to skate. You take them to skating lessons so they can learn it. But for some reason, with guidance, we forget that with guidance, we have to teach it. We have to role model it,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And we have to teach it because they learn by watching others, by listening to others, by the consequences that are provided. So it's up to the adult, in fact, to change their behavior in order to assist children in changing their behavior. And that can be really, really difficult to do because you have to set the
Yeah.
stage for their successful behavior. They can't do it themselves. So, um, I actually just a couple of weeks ago worked with a center who found that they had a lot of children who were running in the homeroom, and asked if I, could give some suggestions. So when I came into the room, it was the room arrangement that really was causing a lot of the issues because it was a very wide open space. So there was lots of room to run. So naturally, little
Hmm.
children who want to get their energy is high anyway. If there's room to run,
Hmm.
we're going to run. So it was just a matter of we moved some shelving around. We were able to put more of the quieter areas together, the active areas together. We noted that they had lots of room, so we had an area there where they could do more of that gross motor play, and it
Hmm.
made a huge difference because they couldn't just run through the block area anymore, for example, which is what was causing some of the issues there because the children were, or sorry, I should say the math area, but they were building structures and they were getting knocked down all the time because the
Yeah.
children could run through. Now we were able to do clear boundaries on either side, so they weren't able to run through. So it did take the adults putting in um, the effort and putting in strategies to assist with the behavior, right? And we also noted that they weren't really getting outside as much as they should have been. So naturally, they were coming into an
Right.
environment
Hmm.
where they wanted to run and they wanted to be
Hmm.
physical because they weren't getting that outdoor time, that time in nature, that time of play that they need as young children, that all of us need. And so we set goals that we would do our best to get them outside, at least twice daily, and to work on having better clothing, brought in for the different
Hmm.
weather and that kind of stuff. So things are going better now, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And the last group of children that I had, I work in a toddler
Mm.
room currently. Um, I saw the need for a gross motor
Hmm.
area.
Love a
And
gross motor area.
toddler
It's my
rooms are not
favorite.
typically the biggest,
No, you're right.
but honestly, we found a way to make it work to get them a gross motor
Yeah.
area. Best decision ever.
Yes, I bet.
And when my new group was about to start in September, I was kind of nervous. I was afraid that they weren't going to catch on to the gross motor area, that it was just going to be like chaos. But honest to goodness, I don't think I like maybe once a week I might have to remind a
Hmm.
child of where it's appropriate to
Right.
run. Like they just learned the expectation right away,
Yep.
and also like the the table areas of your
Hmm.
room, your art, your manipulatives, they don't need to be like super
No,
spacious.
exactly.
So if you can rob Peter to pay
That's
Paul,
right.
then you can make it work
Yep.
and it is a game changer.
It's a lifesaver.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It really
And
is.
and
Yeah.
think of that for any area. Like if it's all about the dramatic play right now, and 'cause sometimes
Yeah.
people limit the amount of children that can go into area, then sometimes you're limiting play, right? Because if you
Yeah.
say, oh,
Yeah.
four people, and they see there's four in there, well, there's a mom and dad, a cat and a dog, and Nan and Papa are about to visit. So now they can't
Hmm.
come and visit because I can only have four people in there. So yeah, you might be making that area much bigger and limiting the block area size down just that little bit or something. So yeah, and again, as early childhood professionals, that's what we know what to do. We know how to observe our
Hmm.
room, we know how to observe the children, we know how to observe the behaviors that are happening, um, and their interest, their needs, their strengths, and really playing on that. And when you do that well, and you get them outside. That's always my first thing. Someone says to me, this behavior is happening. What can I do? Number one, I'd say go outside more. because very,
Hmm.
very
Yes.
rare do you ever have conversations with professionals who say behavior is happening outside. It's just a part of being in nature and a part of being in those outdoor play experiences, that children thrive in. So get them out
Hmm.
more. Do your small groups outside. Do
And
your
they
large
have
groups
the
outside. Yeah.
space to have
Pardon?
space. They have the space to have
Yes.
space. You know,
Yeah.
Right.
if you're in my space, well, there's lots of other places I can go
Yes.
now. I'm not backed up into a corner in a
That's right.
room.
Well, I always say to people in a sort of joke, I mean, who really had the idea of putting $10 in one room and not expect anyone to bite? You know?
Yeah.
That's just going to happen. And like you said, generally speaking, especially years ago, when the square footage for per child was, smaller than what it is now, and it's still not enough. Um, the rooms were much smaller, right? So
Mhm.
now people, who are building new spaces or looking at, renovating, current spaces, look more for larger, bigger spaces because children do. The smaller they are, the more room they want, right? They want to go,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
want to move, and it's not appropriate for them not to. And so a lot of times, and again, that's that environmental piece, right? That physical environment that has a real impact on behavior. And others that are in the behavior, that social environment is a huge impact because we often hear parents will say, "Well, he doesn't do that at home," and probably not, because
Mhm.
again, it's a whole different environment, right? When they're home,
Yeah.
they're not having to turn take necessarily, depending, right? Or to share that
Mhm.
same space. There's more opportunities for quiet play and particular or active play and that kind of thing. So yeah, the environment does have an impact, and that's why our environments are so important for us to make sure that they're quality environments, that they're developmentally appropriate, that they're well equipped, that the setup, the areas that are next to each other. I mean, so much thinking goes into a
Yeah.
room arrangement, but it's for all good reasons, right? And they all
Yeah.
impact behavior and adults too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely, adults as well. Yeah, actually, I like when you said give the benefit of the doubt because first thing a child grabs a toy is not uncommon for another child or maybe even an adult. Hopefully not someone who's a EC professional, but you might hear you're being mean, like that's being mean when you do
Mm.
that. But what you want to and what that's doing is saying to the child that you're intentionally being negative towards somebody else, right? Because you grabbed that
Yeah.
toy instead of saying something like it looks like you really wanted that toy. Let's talk about how we might wait our turn, right? Being able to
Mhm.
pause, being able to observe, being able to ask questions before reacting, I think are just really good strategies in general that you have to have when you're working with children, especially around that positive guidance.
Mhm. So I want to shift the focus a little bit.
Yes.
We've been talking a lot about challenging
Hmm.
behaviors and positive behavior guidance, but I'd like to look into when there's no challenging behaviors,
Hmm.
when there's positive things happening in the classroom. And the idea of, how often we say, good job,
Hmm.
thank you, just the simple little
Hmm.
blurb. But there's so much power in what we call descriptive
Hmm.
feedback. And instead of just good job, you could say, oh, that was great when you helped your friend get some soap.
Hmm.
Thank you so much. That was a very kind thing
Hmm.
to do.
Yeah.
Right. So, what are some other ways that we can really push that positive energy and attention
Yeah.
so that hopefully they don't crave the negative attention so
Right,
much?
right. So I think you're right. And you can watch it happen sometimes where this good job, oh good job, and it's just in passing, right? Someone just quickly
Yeah.
passes by or it says to child, good job. If you observe within a 30-second time frame, sometimes after that educator has even said that comment and moved on, you'll see the child has bundled the artwork up, for example, and it's already thrown it in the garbage, or they've taken a black marker and they've colored through it, recognizing that's not what they wanted, right? So, what you want
Mhm.
to do is give specific feedback that helps the children understand what it is that they did well. if
Yeah.
that's, what you're focusing on, for example. So instead of saying good job, if a child is playing in the math area with blocks, for example, and they've been stacking, you might say, you worked really hard to stack those blocks carefully. So again,
Mhm.
it's like, oh,
Mhm.
okay. Which, if this in particular, for example, is a child that may be having some issues with knocking other blocks over or getting
Right.
frustrated when the blocks are being knocked over, then that's a really positive approach to say, hey, you've really worked hard today. When you were stacking those blocks, you were so careful putting one on and then another one on, and it got so tall. That's a big difference in saying, good job, and walking. Well, what was good? What was good at my job? Did I smile differently? What did I do was good? What was good? Me, did I cross my legs good while I'm sitting here? I'm not sure. So it gives context, I guess. Um, if at cleanup time, maybe there's an issue with a child during cleanup, but you happen to notice that Michael really helped another child like cleaning up. That's the stuff you want to jump on, right? So,
Mhm.
I noticed you helped Michael clean up. That was very kind of you. So you're describing
Yeah.
the action, you're just the effort that the child put in and what the impact is. And that's the meaningful feedback that we want to see. And children who are having struggles, say with cleanup, like Michael, for example, if that's constantly all they're hearing about, then naturally that's the negative tension that they're getting, so they'll seek it.
Yeah.
But if once in all 10 times that day you saw the child helping someone clean up or cleaning up, without being prompted, you jump on that and you really,
Mhm.
um, give that praise, right, for doing that work and in describing, what went well, because they'll. Uh, we always talk about it though, like it's sort of like a cultural shock, because sometimes if they've been getting a lot of negative attention and all of a sudden they're getting all this positive attention, they're kind of like, I don't know if I'm going to really trust that right now. So sometimes the behavior might get a little worse initially, but then
Right.
eventually, when it's
Yeah.
consistent and they begin to trust it and then they become comfortable with it, they're like, okay, you know what? I like this. I like the positive attention I get when I'm turn taking, when I'm sharing, when I'm, picking up things, when I'm not throwing the toys like I used to do, those kinds of things. I'm not pushing
Mhm.
while I'm waiting to use the bathroom or wash my hands. And that's been acknowledged. They will eventually. And I always say as well, ignore where you can. If it's a
Yeah.
safety
Hmm.
issue, absolutely do it. You can't ignore, but ignore where you can, so that you not, again, it just helps that not give that negative attention, which is a consequence, right? That they will
Hmm.
seek if you don't be careful there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like looking at your cleanup example specifically, like I've had a little one who kind of gravitated more towards like the looking for negative feedback, but so like for cleanup time would purposely sit down and look at you like, what are you going to say to me because I'm not
Mm-hmm.
cleaning up. And so I would just look at the other children. Oh, Sonia, you are doing such a great job cleaning up that house area. That's such a big mess over there. You're working really
Mm-hmm.
hard. Thank you. And, oh, Lori, look at all those blocks. You're cleaning up so many blocks. Like, thank you so much for helping. And then just, oh. And then they would go off and start
Yeah,
cleaning up. Like, oh, thank you so much for cleaning up the art area. There's just crayons everywhere. That's such a big help that you're picking
that's
them all
right.
up.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've worked with some challenging behaviors as a frontline early child educator, and we literally made a plan where we kept a checklist inside the cupboard door, and every day before we went home, we had to give at least 3 positive comments, because what we were trying to do, right, was to bring the positive comments
Hmm.
up and the negative comments down, so that because if
Yeah,
you get to a point with challenging behaviors, all you see is what's not happening, right? You're
yeah,
so focused on it. So then you got to put that switch on, right? That's when we talk about, it takes the adult to set the stage. We've got to
yeah,
we got to make that switch yourself and say, okay, like I've got to find ways to give that positive attention. And it's difficult.
Yeah.
And I can
yeah,
remember when the challenging behaviors was so challenging for this one particular child that I was working with, that I literally said, your eyes are bluer today than they were yesterday. because there was so much going
Yeah.
on. And for this little one,
Yeah.
there's so much going on at home. He had some traumatic changes in his life, and it was impacting the behavior. He was also the oldest in the room, so again, when we look at the characteristics of the child, he was at a
Yeah.
much different level of play. So we needed to be better at challenging him. That kind of stuff. So there was a lot, right? There was a lot happening. And so he was telling his story. I am hurting
Yeah.
and I'm showing it in my behavior. And what I really need
Mhm.
was to learn to co regulate and to connect with us, to be supported and know that we're here for him. And in times when he's just not feeling himself and when he's still practicing when he needs to do with these really strong emotions that he never had before. And
Yeah.
you got to
Yeah.
look at it that way, like, this is my time as a professional to now shine and step up and do what I need to set the stage for this child who needs me, instead of going, oh my, he's here again today and I've got to deal with these challenging behaviors. Right, so it's your
Yeah.
approach
Yeah.
to and how you look at behavior, because it is someone's story, and and,
Yeah.
and and
Yeah.
they need help.
Well, like there was an instance a few months ago where I like looked at a child and I was like, oh, that they were very angry with another friend, and we had had a lot of challenging behaviors with this child. And I praised him to the high heavens because he picked up a block to hit somebody with it, and he took a deep breath and put it down with nobody talking to him about it.
Exactly.
And I was like, that is so hard.
Mm-hmm.
That is so hard,
And
and you
you
did it
did it.
all by
Yeah.
yourself.
But what
That is
happens is when we're
fantastic.
involved in working with challenging behaviors, sometimes that's so easy to not even be seen, right? But
Hmm.
that's the stuff you gotta see, right? That's when your observation
Yeah.
skills gotta really zone in, and focus, right? And that's hard when
Hmm.
challenge behavior is exhausting.
Yes.
Like I said, your program's impacted. Often other children are impacted. You're impacted. So it can be it's challenging for you. That's why we call it challenging behavior for you, your
Hmm.
child, your environment, your surroundings, your program. So yeah, so you like you said, you got to pick up that's the stuff you got to be looking for. And like I said, if it
Yeah.
comes to having a checklist, like we've had to do, I say that to people. And what I found with this checklist, myself and my coworker Karen, we said, okay, we're starting with three. So three each, that's six. That's six positive things he's going to get that day, that we're going to truly focus on. And we'd even joke and say, don't you want your break yet? You got to give one more before you go. Like we really, made ourselves, we made this happen, but what I found
Yeah.
was after a while, I didn't even go to the checklist or like to tick off because it was becoming natural to
Mhm.
look for it. And eventually,
Hmm.
the negative
Yeah.
attention was going down, the positive attention was coming up, and there was a change in those behaviors. But it took us to work with the child, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a lot of work that needed to happen. And it took work with the family too. Like, we the strategies that we were using, we found working. We shared with the parents. We were very open with the parents. A lot of good communication about what was happening. When it was affecting his sleep, for example, because it was hard in the nighttime. He was missing his dad when he would go to bed. So naturally, that was a hard time for him. So imagine when nap time or quiet time was happening at our center. Well, naturally, we were going to get the same responses as
Yeah.
they were getting at home. And although he was an older child, he was dropped off at the center at 7 a.m. He wasn't picked up till 6 p.m. It was an hour and a half
Yeah.
drive to get to the center every way. Their days were long. He needed a rest, whether it was a shut eye rest or just a body rest. He needed it, but that was his time then to reflect, right? Like all of us, and you go to bed, and
Yeah.
that's when your mind opens up and you think about all the things that
Hmm.
are going on in your life. And so, yeah, he was struggling. So, you know what? He needed us more at quiet time than he ever did before, and we had to
Yeah.
provide that for him. That was important for him at the time.
Yeah. I think um, two of the main things that are like overarching themes of this conversation are connection and then meeting the child where they
Hmm.
are, finding that message, what they're trying to communicate to us, what they're trying to receive,
Absolutely.
what they need. And I just want to thank you so much, Lori, because so many little tidbits of information that are like floating around in my head now. I think every episode that we've done, it's just my mind is just racing because I'm just like a renewed excitement for, the
Hmm.
topic and bringing it back to my playroom and my children and my partners. And I just thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Yes.
It was great having you.
I really appreciate it.
Was there anything else that you were hoping to share on the
No,
topic or
no. I mean, the challenging behaviors is that there's so we could talk for days, and
we
there's so
could?
many
Yeah.
strategies and the observations and documentations that we need. But at the end of the day, just remember that when we are talking about positive guidance, it is really about building those relationships with children,
Yeah.
understanding the why of that behavior, and
Hmm.
empowering our children that we work with from day to day. So for
Yeah.
educators, I really encourage you to, reflect on the language that you use with your children. Again, rephrasing, those don't do, know this, know that, to what you want the children to be doing. And just look at your approaches and how do you make that those negative approaches that we sometimes look at around guidance and discipline into that positive approaches that supports lifelong skills. That's really what I hope we get
Yeah.
out of this evening.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Lori.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Enjoy your evening.
I do love talking about positive behavior guidance.
Me too.
I I think it's a refresher to help our minds get more into that phase of just using positive reinforcement, positive language,
Hmm.
and positive attitudes too because we have to go in like giving the children the benefit of the doubt.
Always, always, always. Because I think sometimes it's not always easy to remember when you, especially when you see like bigger behaviors or bigger like actions
And more
that,
frequently.
and more frequently, that there's a reason for it. Like,
Yeah.
especially at that age, like nobody hurts other people because they feel like it. Like it's a very rare occurrence.
Hmm.
Like usually it's a reaction to something, and to us it might seem that the reaction kind of is very exacerbated to what happened, but to
Yeah.
them it's a big deal.
Yeah. Absolutely. um and I know that when we think about like the emotional response and how big of a deal it is to them, they're also looking for our emotional response.
Hmm.
And yes, there are times that they're looking for a reaction.
Yes,
And it's not that they want that negative reaction, they just want a reaction.
they
They
want
want
that
to feel connected.
connected. They, and especially if depending on how your day is going, they've kind of been unintentionally pushed to the side.
Yeah. And how often we hear attention seeking behavior
Yeah,
when in reality it's connection seeking behavior. They're feeling
yeah,
disconnected
yeah.
and they their minds know that the easiest way to get a reaction from their grown-ups or their peers
Hmm.
is to do something that could bother them or they don't like.
Yeah.
It's not that they're trying to upset them.
No.
They're just trying to get what they need.
Yeah.
Um I did see a guy on Facebook Reels. I can't remember what the tag was, but we'll put it in after, I guess.
Yep.
Um and he was talking, I think he's a neuroscience or does some type of neural studies. And he was talking about how, regardless of the type of response that the child gets, positive or negative reaction response,
Mm-hmm.
it triggers their reward center in their brain.
Yes.
And the most, it made so much sense, but at the same time, it felt so novel, even though I can look back at so many experiences and see that what he said works. But he said the more calm and matter of fact you react, the less they're going to feel rewarded for what they did. They're not going to feel that reward from doing something negative.
Yeah.
So, like, save our big emotional responses for the
The
positive,
positives. Yeah.
because then that's going to trigger their brains to realize, oh, I need to do something positive, something kind, something helpful to get this feeling that I'm craving.
Yes. Absolutely.
Um, we talked a lot about choices.
I love choices. It's my
Love
favorite.
choices.
And, you
I
know,
give my partners choices all the time. But you know how, like, even for adults, it's such a little thing, but people recognize and appreciate that so much.
yes.
Because as adults, we have a lot of things that are responsibilities and they're non negotiables. That if I can say, hey, would you rather serve snack or would you rather set up for the activity? If I can give that choice to my partner, then why not? Some
Yeah.
days I might really prefer to set up for the activity. And I could be like, hey, Taylor, for such and such a reason, I'd really like to set up the activity today. Do you mind serving snack? And
Yes.
generally the answer is going to be, no, I don't mind serving snack. Because you respected your partner enough to give that choice. So if we
Mm-hmm.
can give that same respect to the children, you know, snack needs to be served, activity needs to be set up for. Which would you rather do?
Yeah. Um,
Would you rather put this toy away now or after you get dressed for outside? Who cares
you
what
know,
order it's done in, as long as
yeah,
they do it?
right? Or like, especially the summertime when you have to do bathrooms before you go outside and you've got to
Hmm.
do sunscreen and you've got to do this. It's all right. You don't like doing either of those tasks, but they both have to be done. Which do you want to do first?
Yeah,
Or, hey, we have to do sunscreen today. Do you want to do it now? Or do you want me to do one more person before you?
yeah.
Or put in a timer or whatever. Just just something. And even though they're still doing the required thing that they don't like to do, they feel empowered because they got to set a limit that
Yeah.
they're happy with.
So, can we talk a little bit about the elephant in the room? The big NO.
No, we can't.
It's
Um, using the word no almost never works.
more of a trigger than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and when we say, don't turn on the light, because we have friends who can reach the light switches
Mm-hmm.
during quiet time, that's always fun. Not. Um, but when we say that, there is literal science that proves that the children don't process the don't.
No.
And all they hear is turn on the light.
Mhm.
And I saw, and I will never find this one again. Apologies to everyone out in the internet. But if I have two of your favorite fruits, I have a slice of peach and a strawberry in my hand.
Those are my favorites.
And you know both those words. I know you do because I get you to label them. What's this? And you say peach. What's this? And you say strawberry. So I know you know the two words and you know the two items. If I say, show me the one that is not the strawberry,
I'm gonna show you the strawberry.
you're going to show me the strawberry. There have been so many experiments done on that. And it's been proven that they don't, the negative phrasing doesn't
Doesn't work.
factor in their mind
No.
yet at this point. Um so yeah, that's why we do positive behavior guidance. We phrase things in a
Mhm.
positive way so that children hear what we want them to do, not what we don't want them to do.
Yeah. And it's
And
so funny because, like, sometimes, like, just a slight tweak in the sentence
yeah.
makes such a huge difference.
Yeah.
Like, at our center, we have a very long hallway.
Mhm.
It is very tempting to every child in that building to take off down it
Yeah.
because why not? Especially because halfway through there's a little ramp that goes down.
Yeah.
So that's like your Kickstarter.
That tripped me up for the first month and a half I worked
It
there.
still trips me up every once in a while. But if like just like you said, if you say don't run, they're either going to start running, the ones that hadn't yet started, or they're just going to keep going.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I get it. Walking is really boring sometimes, and so I'll just say we either need to walk or we can hop. We can hop down the hallway,
Mhm.
or we can walk down the hallway.
'Cause let's be
But those are
real,
our choices.
hopping down the hallway might not be our preference as adults, but it will slow them down.
It slows them down greatly.
Yeah. I've started so we have a lunchroom. So
Hmm.
we leave our classroom to go eat lunch. And I've started noticing that some of the friends want to just bolt out towards the classroom.
Hmm.
So they really, really enjoy the walking, 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 stop.
Yeah.
So I've started doing that on the way back from the lunchroom. And
Hmm.
it's so funny to see 10 little toddlers just tippy toe, tippy toe, stop.
Stop.
And they're just like stopping
Tippy
right in the
too.
middle of the hallway, right?
Yep.
And then they just wait. What's next?
Yeah.
But making things fun too, right?
Yes.
It's hard to be creative on the spot, especially if you've gotten frustrated
Hmm.
trying so many different things. Because let's be real, what I just said works with my group might not work with your group.
No, and
They might
also,
see right through that.
or, and like the other thing too, it might work for your group for a few weeks,
Mm.
and then they're like, "All right, I'm done with this."
Well,
This-
for example, we just discovered, okay, all this week past, we were talking about the fact that for 2.5 weeks, as soon as we got back from the lunchroom, the children needed those high energy action songs like that one we just did, or
Mm-hmm.
bear hunt, or the floor is lava. For like 2.5 weeks between lunch and nap time, they needed that.
Yeah.
And now, for the past week, they need the calming Zen yoga type music. And it's like, where did this switch happen? And how is it the entire
Here.
group?
It is. It's a whole group at once.
Yep. Which is
It,
lovely.
I was gonna say
I am
it's
not complaining
fantastic because there's
that it
nothing
works
worse
for,
when it only
but
works for
yeah,
half. But
yeah. Um, but when we're talking too about rephrasing things with statements kind of like, instead of don't run, say
mm-hmm.
walk please. There's also the age old sayings of walking feet, listening ears, inside voice. And it's not that they're not appropriate. There's just more effective ways to say it. And by effective, I mean we know that children are so, in the preschool age, are so literal minded
Mm-hmm.
that if I tell you as a 3-year-old, Taylor, use your walking feet, your little mind is trying to process, where are my walking feet? How do I change my feet? It's the same type of idea as if you're in a diaper still and I say, let's go change your bum,
Well, I only have one bum. Thank you very much.
right? I Your literal mind thinks we're literally giving you a new bum when in actuality we're changing your diaper. So instead of saying walking feet, we can simply say, please walk, or walk please.
Yeah.
Just saying, it's 2 words, it's
And
the
I was
same
gonna
amount
say,
of
and
words.
also, the less words you use, the easier it is for them to process.
Yep. Yep.
Especially like the younger you get.
And that's true because we're saying use your walking feet. That's 4 words. Whereas we could say walk please. It's only 2 words.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't even think about it that way, but that's very true. Less processing required.
Yep.
And like we said, it's not that it's wrong. It's just not as effective.
Yeah.
Um that same guy that I spoke about earlier
Mm-hmm.
also gave a little tip in one of his videos that I thought was so cute. And he said to make your praise more genuine seeming to the child, instead of praising the child, praise their stuffies. Praise them
Okay.
to their stuffies. And
Okay.
if the child doesn't have a stuffy and you're my partner, I could praise little Johnny to you.
Yeah,
I could say,
absolutely.
Taylor, did you notice that Johnny picked up all the Legos without even being asked?
Yeah.
Johnny's going to overhear that. The other children are going to overhear that. And they're going to be like, I want Miss Sonia to say that about me.
Yeah, absolutely. Like,
But I definitely want, I'm going to put his tag on this episode for sure.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Cuz it was just 2 videos I saw, but such great ideas and just kind of like those light bulb moments. I do that, but I never clued in as to, or I never realized, because he actually explains the neuroscience behind these things.
Yes. Well, I mean, it's
So,
kind of like it makes perfect sense because like let's if we go back to the kind of example that I gave earlier in this episode, um, and discussing like ignoring negative behaviors when it's
mhm,
safe, with the little one at cleanup time was
yep,
purposely not cleaning up because like looking for that attention.
yep,
And so instead of giving my
Connection.
attention, it was a connection. So instead of giving it to her, I was talking to the other friends.
Yeah.
You know, oh, that was a great job picking up all those Legos. You know, thank you so much for tidying up all those books. Especially with the older they get, where, you know, they are very cognizant of the fact that, you know, I'm cleaning up this book area,
They're competitive.
even though I wasn't in the book area, I cleaned it up for you.
Yeah.
And oh, thank you so much for cleaning up all those books. And it's the same concept where the other little girl was like, oh, I want that.
Yeah.
I want that reaction. And so went and started to help clean up. And I immediately gave her the exact same praise as everybody else. Thank you so much, Sonia, for, you know, helping out in the house area. That's a great help, whatever.
Yeah. But yeah, absolutely. It's just, and like we said in the episode with Lori, we said it's just a matter of rephrasing what
Mm-hmm.
we're saying and reframing our mindset.
Yes.
And I think a really key part of positive behavior guidance is also remaining professional.
Very much so.
Because if I'm in customer service, I'm not going to disrespect my customers, the people I'm serving. So why would I disrespect the children that I'm serving? I'm giving a service to the families and the children.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to consider them at all times. And the customer is always right. So give them the benefit of a doubt.
Yeah.
Same kind of concept, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, again, we're seeing those connections from month to month. Next month, we're going to be doing our episode on professional practice.
Yes.
And I'm sure we're going to be talking about how we can have professional relationships with the children as well. And that starts with positive behavior guidance.
It really does. Well, everyone, thank you so much for watching, and we hope to see you next month.
Bye.